Hello and welcome to Ag PhD. I'm Darren Hefty.
And I'm Darren Hefty. Thanks for joining us today. We're going to talk about a couple big issues that we saw in soybean fields in 2019 and how you can prevent them from robbing your yields in 2020. It's sudden death syndrome and soybean cyst nematode.
Well, we do love talking about soybeans here on the show, but another thing we like talking about and just don't get to it often enough is milo. We're going to discuss milo herbicides on today's show.
Well, I don't care which crop you've got, Brian. You don't want to have our weed of the week out in your field. We'll show you how to stop this tough weed a little bit later in the show. But first, here's our farm basics.
The corn we planted early February have all good emergence. So far, we can't find any condition that the wheels haven't worked. I can just say that.
Closing the seed trench behind the planter is essential to establishing yields in the fall. Introducing the Germinator Closing Wheel from Farm Shop MFG. Designed and built by a farmer who is tired of seeing poor stands because of uneven emergence, the Germinator is here to give your crop the strong start it needs for maximum yield. For more information, visit us at farmshopmfg.com.
During our farm basics time today, we're going to talk just a little about direct seeding versus having a nurse crop. So if you're a non-farmer, you're probably going, what are you talking about? But this really comes down to trying to raise two different crops at the same time very early in the season versus just one.
All right, first of all, let's talk about what is a nurse crop, because that sounds kind of weird. Well, let's say that you're seeding alfalfa. Alfalfa may take as long as 28 days to really germinate and start growing. Well, 28 days is a long time, and so for farmers, they want to have a little bit of cover out there. Oftentimes we would see, as we were growing up, and it's still a practice that happens today, oats being put in as a nurse crop with alfalfa. Well, oats only takes a few days to germinate and pop out of the ground. So if you put oats out there, all of a sudden you have some nice little grass growth out there to protect those young alfalfa seedlings.
Well, Darren, it's not just to protect the alfalfa seeds or seedlings. What it's really about is protecting the soil. The purpose of a nurse crop is to have something growing there to hold the soil in place and protect it from wind and rain erosion.
Well, the reason I was saying seedlings, Brian, is because in sandier soils, that sand can blow and it can chop off small plants. And that's why a lot of farmers with lighter soils want to have something that can get out there and stand, especially in a crop where they have to do some tillage, like often happens with alfalfa.
Now, here's the interesting thing. If you have ever watched Ag PhD before, you know how we hate weeds. And you also probably know that anything in the field other than the actual crop is a weed. So in effect, that nurse crop to us is a weed. So when we say, hey, we're going to have this nurse crop growing, is that going to hurt the alfalfa production? Absolutely no question about it. That's why, if possible, we would prefer to not have a nurse crop. But like Darren said, if you have sand, if you're worried about erosion, just protecting that soil and the young seedling, period. Yeah, you might say, well, I'm willing to sacrifice a little bit of yield and I'll put a nurse crop in.
All right, so we talked direct seeding, just putting alfalfa out there, for example. That's a great thing to do. In many cases, like Brian said, you can maximize your yield potential. We like to do that in our part of the country in April or in August. And the reasons why is because we're going right into times where we typically get some rainfall to get things to start. And this is one of the keys to getting a crop off to a good start, is getting timely rainfall after planting. Now, if a farmer had irrigation, which a small percentage of acres in the United States have irrigation, that's great. The farmer can plant and then water it in really quickly. But in areas that are on a dry land production where you don't have irrigation, putting your crop in the ground at the right time of year is really critical. And if you're going to do direct seeding with alfalfa, that's what I would recommend. Get it out there right before you're going to see some rain.
Okay, so once again, direct seeding is when we're planting just the crop. Having a nurse crop out there in addition to the crop can also be done, and the purpose is basically to prevent erosion and maybe to protect the seed and seedlings.
Well, with either type of seeding system, you are going to have to control our weed of the week. We'll show you what will work coming up later in the show.
Success isn't just about maintaining your operation, how you make out for the season, or how much you can get from each acre. It's about doing precisely what needs to be done to feed your crop and grow your legacy, all the way down to the last drop. AgroLiquid Precision Crop Nutrition. Apply less, expect more. Find a retailer at agroliquid.com.
Where we have run the Soil Warrior, we have harvested the best corn we have ever harvested in the history of Wrenwood Farms. Now, I'm kind of always wanting to push the envelope to see what else I can do to help enhance that emergence. Their ride is so much smoother. Their seed placement is even better. Where we had our best emergence and we've had our best yields was where we ran the Soil Warrior.
Make sure your farm equipment is season ready with an uptime inspection from your Titan Machinery service professionals. Titan Machinery's team of Case IH certified technicians has the knowledge and experience to find, correct, and prevent mechanical issues that could shut you down during the season. Your planting and harvest windows are short. For genuine Case IH parts and service, schedule an off-season uptime inspection at Titan Machinery today. Titan Machinery, your local Case IH dealer.
Ideal for herbicide applications, the ultra-low drifts large air-inducted droplets were designed to eliminate driftable fines without sacrificing coverage. Its thick three-dimensional pattern creates multiple angles for the spray to cover the target. Hypro, helping you spray better.
Introducing the all-new Diamant Cornhead from Capello, USA. With a revolutionary design highly innovative for its class, we have painstakingly designed every component down to the smallest detail to maximize your harvest efficiency. This gives you unprecedented standards in operation and performance. For more information about this beast, available only in our new gray poly, call 855-CAPELLO or visit capellousa.com to find a dealer near you. Capello, wherever you are, we are.
2019, unfortunately, was a bad year for sudden death syndrome, and also soybean cyst nematode is out there all the time as well. Well, you might wonder, why are we packaging together sudden death syndrome and soybean cyst nematode in one topic here on the show? Well, the reason why is because some of the treatment methods are the same, and quite often what we find is if you have soybean cyst nematode, your sudden death syndrome pressure, or just how much yield loss there is, becomes much worse.
Let's talk first about SDS, because why was 2019 a bad year? There are a lot of farmers that I talked to in the spring who were delaying their planting, not by choice, but due to the weather conditions that we had. And they said, you know, the one good thing about this, if I'm planting soybeans in June, I'm not going to get sudden death syndrome. Well, that was not the right thing to say, because they certainly did get sudden death syndrome. Here's two big things that led to more SDS problems in 2019, and in SDS problems in areas that normally don't see SDS. The first one was poor drainage. I've talked to many farmers who had more SDS than they've had for years, and they said, you know what, I had wet soils for so long, I need to split my tile lines, or I need to tile this part of the field or this whole field that hasn't been tiled before. That was a big issue. If we can't get water away, we're just going to have more of many different types of diseases out in the field. The second cause of SDS this last year that made it so much worse was compaction. The fall of 2018 in many of the areas in the upper Midwest didn't allow for tillage, and it was a wet harvest where there was some compaction out there that didn't get addressed. I talked to a number of these farmers that had SDS who said, you know, the only tillage I did was just lightly come over the top of the field cultivator just to level things out. Those ruts never got fixed, and guess what? In those parts of the field, I saw worse SDS. So I would say this, first of all, going into 2020, fix the compaction wherever you possibly can. And if you've got drainage issues, fix them now before you get that crop out there that's going to suffer.
I'll be honest, on our farm, to fix both of those issues in the spring, almost impossible. How am I going to fix compaction in the spring? How am I going to fix drainage in the spring? So you start thinking about that and you go, oh no, I'm done. There's nothing now that I can do this spring. Yes, there certainly is. So one of those is we would encourage you to consider seed treatments. Olevo has been out for the last few years. Saltro now from Syngenta has just come out. Both of those do have some activity on sudden death syndrome. They also are going to have some activity on soybean cyst nematode. So if you've got a bad issue or really worried you're going to have a bad issue, you can certainly put that seed treatment out. The only bad thing about that is now you have to treat all your seed with the seed treatment, my point is you're going to get the treatment on every acre. You're going to spend the, whatever it is, $10 or $12 on every single acre. Well, maybe not every acre needs the treatment for sudden death syndrome. What you could do if you've got a multiple variety planter is have one variety treated and put that variety in your SDS area and have that be the more tolerant variety. And then for the other areas, do whatever you want, and you don't have to have that Saltro or Olivo on the seed.
Well, I'm glad you brought up varieties, Brian, because I think this was the other problem that we had going on in 2019 is due to the delayed planting. We had a lot of farmers across the country switching the varieties they were going to be planting. So maybe you're planning on putting a 3.0 maturity out, all of a sudden you had to switch back to a 2.5 or a 2.0, and whenever we get varietal switching, it makes me so nervous that we're not going to get the right defensive traits out there. Because pre-planting is great, and you can pre-plan just like Brian was laying out, hey, let's take that variety that has really good tolerance to SDS, and let's make sure we've got that in the plan. But then all of a sudden when you switch maturities, many times farmers were rushing. I know this happened to so many guys this year that it was, hey, I can get a field in, let's go get some seed quick, and we forget to ask those extra questions. So make sure that you're planning for the defensive traits that you need, like SDS tolerance going into this year.
All right, when it comes to soybean cyst nematode, that issue's been out there for a long time. And I mentioned that Saltro and Olivo would have some activity. There are certainly other products like Votivo, Chloriva Complete, and many others that you can use as seed treatments. The problem is, again, you got to put it on all the seed. So we find cyst nematodes in hot spots, and yes, absolutely, the seed treatment pays there. But the problem is it going to pay on average across the whole field? In a lot of cases, no, it does not. So I can't really tell you that for me personally, I'm going to make a lot of recommendations where I say, if all you have, your only concern is soybean cyst nematode, treat all your soybeans. I would rather have you just pick the right variety and go from there. The other side is, worst case scenario, sudden death syndrome and soybean cyst nematode do not affect corn or wheat. So plant a non-host crop for even a couple of years and you'll see your SDS and your SCN problems drop off quite a bit.
The other thing, Brian, we get a lot of questions about other soybean cyst nematode resistance sources like Peking, for example. There are a few Peking varieties out there that are worth planting. I know over the years we've said quite often, man, this new Peking variety came out and it just didn't yield, and that still is the case. We still do see some coming in the market and they just aren't worthy of placement yet. But there are some that are pretty good. So talk to your seed supplier about this. See if there are some varieties that they can show you have some proven yield data and are worth planting. That would be great. The other thing, like Brandon talked about earlier, variable variety planting. If you've got a planter capable of that and you can put the Peking variety just in your SCN hotspots, that would be a great strategy as well.
All right, last thing. So we've talked about all the planning up front and planting time and seed treatments. How about foliar fungicides if you've got sudden death syndrome? And you might be wondering, well, are there any fungicides labeled? Actually, yes, there's one. Fortix is labeled for suppression if you spray at R1, so that's at first flower. The big thing with sudden death syndrome is we often see the symptoms later on in the year. It's R3 or R5, R6, and Darren and I will start getting calls saying, hey, I think I have sudden death syndrome. Okay, well, it took that long for the symptoms to really show up in the plants. But you know what? That infection occurred much earlier. So you've got to be treating right at R1. And I'm not going to tell you that it's going to gain you 30 bushels or anything like that. But can it help? Yes. Can it pay? Absolutely.
Soybean cyst nematode and sudden death syndrome are a big problem in 2019. We don't want to see that on the farm in 2020. That's why we're talking about it on today's show. The other thing we're going to focus on today is our weed of the week. Can you identify this week's weed?
This is a seed bag. This bag is made of craft paper with a cellophane liner and provides nothing for seed growth. This is a seed bed. It was prepared with Case IH soil management tools. It optimizes everything from nutrient access to water infiltration to create the perfect environment for early, uniform emergence. Get to know why your seed bed drives productivity at caseih.com/soil management.
Where we have run the Soil Warrior, we have harvested the best corn we have ever harvested in the history of Wrenwood Farms. Now, I'm kind of always wanting to push the envelope to see what else I can do to help enhance that emergence. Their ride is so much smoother. Their seed placement is even better. Where we had our best emergence and we've had our best yields was where we ran the Soil Warrior.
Find love, and then give it all away. Find love, then give it all away.
If you're looking to expand your farm's grain handling, you want everything to be fast and efficient. The Quick Belt from Norwood Sales is your all-around grain handling solution. Our conveyor-based system uses an 18-inch belt and a 10-inch tube, which minimizes seed damage while moving more than 10,000 bushels an hour. That's fast enough to fill a semi in 6 minutes. Plus, our hood is designed to gently direct the flow of grain straight down, keeping your crop in condition. Keep your grain and your farm moving with the Quick Belt from Norwood Sales.
More choices, more money. With Bayer Plus Rewards, you choose from our broad portfolio of high-performance products. Earn more money on the eligible products that are right for your farm. And use our new portal to see your purchases, track your rewards, and decide how you want to use them. Visit mybayerplus.com to sign in and start earning. That's the advantage of more control in your hands. That's the plus.
When Darren and I start talking about corn herbicides or soybean herbicides, it feels like it takes forever. If we're going to do a topic on the show, we have to really narrow up the focus. Well, with milo or grain sorghum herbicides, we don't have to narrow up much. There are so few selections that farmers just don't have a lot of choice. But we want to talk about what those options are today. Let's start by saying this. For the pre-emerge products that we would normally recommend, like Outlook or Dual, you got to make sure that your milo, your grain sorghum, is treated so you can have that herbicide tolerance. We've always talked about Concept, for example, as a treatment, but just make sure your seed is treated.
Well, Brad said there weren't many choices that you could use in milo. The good thing is the choices you have are good ones. He mentioned Metolachlor or Dual. He mentioned Outlook. The other one that's pretty exciting is you could use Verdict, which is a combination of Outlook and Sharpen. Now, this time you can use a pretty strong rate of Verdict. In some crops, you can't use quite this much, but you can use 10 ounces of Verdict. That puts 2 ounces of Sharpen out there, which is great broadleaf weed control. Now, normally with these pre-emerge herbicides, we're mainly concerned about grass. That's why we talk about Outlook and Metolachlor. But if broadleaves are a concern, Verdict could be part of the mix for you as well.
These pre-emerge products are really good for grass, and then like Darren said, if you have Verdict out there with the Sharpen, that's broadleaves. I want to talk about grass, or start with grass post-emerge. You don't have a whole bunch of choices. In the past, it's been atrazine. Well, atrazine's not very good, and you can't and shouldn't use very much atrazine. Then the other thing is Facet. That's quinclorac, used to be called Paramount. It's a pretty good product, it just costs a fair amount of money. And the big thing here is if you spray grass post-emerge, you want to make sure that grass is small for 2 reasons. Number 1, grass really hurts the yield on milo. Number 2, if you let the grass get very big, especially bigger than 2 or 3 inches tall, your control percentage is going to go down. So spray early if you're going to use Facet.
All right, with broadleaf weed control, there are quite a few different options. One that I don't think gets enough play is Husky. I talked to a number of guys who use Bucktrol and have used Bucktrol for years, or Bucktrol and atrazine. I like Husky because in addition to Bucktrol, or the active ingredient from Bucktrol, you've also got an HPPD killer in there as well. So you got 2 different modes of action. It's been a really nice product for us in cereals, like in wheat, for example. So it's one that you may consider if the weed spectrum fits you right in your milo fields.
All right, so basically for broadleaf control, you've got Husky, but then you also have dicamba, there's atrazine, and there's Bucktrol. That's about it. So this whole conversation was pretty simple. You've got Outlook or Dual for grass. You can go pre-emerge with Sharpen. You can go post-emerge for grass with Facet, post-emerge for broadleaves. You've got Husky, dicamba, atrazine, and Bucktrol.
All right, so there aren't very many options here for weed control, but how about on the key weeds like kochia water hemp, and Palmer pigweed.
All right, pretty simple. Make sure you're using verdict down. It's that easy. Use verdict down because that sharpen in there is going to give you such better control than just the Outlook or Dual. You'll be really happy on water hemp, kochia, Palmer pigweed, all those broadleaf weeds. That'll be much better. Then post-emerge, you can come with either dicamba plus atrazine, or you could use husky.
And rather than using the Buctrol, again, use the husky or use the dicamba. That's going to be better options for you, especially on the pigweed species. Well, there are a lot of different weeds that are out there. Our weed of the week we haven't touched on yet. We'll show you what will stop it coming up next.
The Weed of the Week is brought to you by Corteva Agriscience, Agriculture Division of Dow DuPont. Finish the fight against tough weeds with the Enlist Weed Control System.
Weeds are tough, but we're tougher. With unrivaled weed control, reduced drift, and near zero volatility. So, who's tough now?
Our weed of the week is actually one of the first grasses that Darren and I were able to identify when we were young. It's field sandberg.
Well, yeah, we were able to identify it because the sandberg stuck to our pant legs or our socks or our shoes or our dog.
Shoelaces.
That's no fun picking those out. And obviously we can identify field sandberg pretty easy when you see the burrs on the weed. But how about earlier in the season? When we look at field sandberg, to me, it's a little different shade of green than what we see foxtails being. So that's one thing that you can look at. Here's the no-brainer though, dig up the small weeds. With grass plants, the seed will be attached to the root, and if you've got a sandburr attached to the root, you know you're dealing with field sandburr.
All right, so this is called field sandburr because usually we find it in sandier areas of fields. Well, why is that? My personal opinion is, yes, it maybe doesn't need quite as much moisture to thrive as some of the other grasses, but I think a lot of it has to do with when you look at your crop in those sandy areas, the crop just doesn't do very well. So what happens is there's a lot more sunlight that gets to the ground, and basically, like we like to talk about crop canopy is the best weed killer there is. Well, if there's no crop canopy, then all of a sudden field sandburr that does germinate a little later in the year can get its start.
That's right, it's a warm season grass, so we're not gonna see this super early in the year. We're gonna see it popping up just a little bit later. So that's one of the reasons the pre-emerge herbicides haven't been great on field sandburr.
No, they've been sketchy at best. So we were just talking about Outlook and Dual. You'll get some control, but it's just not that great. What we liked the best in the past was the old Eradicane. You can still use Eptam, that's the same active ingredient in alfalfa. Eradicane we used to use in corn.
In corn, you have to remember those group 15s, just like in milo, they're not going to work in corn either.
Right.
So we need Roundup or Liberty post-emerge, or you could use Accent Q if you had conventional corn post.
Good news in soybeans, we have some great pre-products. It's the yellows, trifluorolensanilantide prowl, post-emerge clethodim, or almost any grass killer will do a decent job on field sandburr.
In wheat, we normally don't have a problem because we get our crop established, so crop canopy often chokes out field sandburr. You could start with Prepare Down, come back over the top with Axial if you had some.
Well, that's it for our Weed of the Week, but stay tuned. Iron Talk is coming up next.
It's no secret that Mother Nature doesn't always cooperate with your schedule. Field conditions in recent years kept many from timely planting and fertilizing, and when you can't get your fertilizer applied, you lose thousands of dollars in yield potential. If you need flexibility in your fertility application timing, you need a drop tube system from C&R Supply. C&R drop tubes allow you to apply liquid nitrogen in season and place it exactly where your crop needs it. To learn more about low-cost C&R drop tube solutions, visit crsupply.com.
Challenging field conditions often make harvest difficult. Can your corn head handle it? The GTS X10 corn head from Agra US is a rugged, cost-effective alternative to heavier, more traditional heads. Constructed of durable yet lightweight aluminum, the X10 puts less strain on your combine without losing harvest effectiveness. And it is 40% lighter than traditional heads, reducing field compaction in those less than ideal conditions. For more information, give us a call at 8334-AGRA US.
How much does your crop residue cost you? Over time, residue accumulates in your fields, building excess carbon levels and tying up your plant available nitrogen. Residue also traps P, K, and micros, and can take years to naturally become available to your crops. This is because soil lacks the diverse microbial life needed to break it all down. With Decomp, you can naturally restore life to your soil and allow the release of valuable crop fertility. Learn more about Decomp at eggbio.solutions.
Success isn't just about maintaining your operation, how you make out for the season, or how much you can get from each acre. It's about doing precisely what needs to be done to feed your crop and grow your legacy, all the way down to the last drop. AgroLiquid Precision Crop Nutrition. Apply less, expect more. Find a retailer at agroliquid.com.
Do you feel like there's never enough time to get everything done before planting? The window for spring work is quick and unforgiving. Give yourself the upper hand with the ProTill High Performance High Speed Disc. More and more farmers agree the ProTill is the right tool for springfield conditions and heavy residue management. Zero maintenance bearings, independent disc technology, oversized pins and bushings allow the ProTill to handle whatever field or conditions you can throw at it. Degelman High Performance Equipment.
More choices, more money. With Bayer Plus Rewards, you choose from our broad portfolio of high-performance products. Earn more money on the eligible products that are right for your farm. And use our new portal to see your purchases, track your rewards, and decide how you want to use them. Visit mybayerplus.com to sign in and start earning. That's the advantage of more control in your hands. That's the plus.
Iron Talk is brought to you by Case IH.
This is a seed bag. This bag is made of craft paper with a cellophane liner and provides nothing for seed growth. This is a seed bed. It was prepared with Case IH soil management tools. It optimizes everything from nutrient access to water infiltration to create the perfect environment for early, uniform emergence. Get to know why your seedbed drives productivity at caseih.com/soil management.
In the busy rush of spray season, the last thing you want to hear is slow down. That's exactly my advice in today's Iron Talk. On the highways, there are posted speed limits to protect you and to encourage safe vehicle operation. Imagine if there was a posted speed limit sign at the entrance of each of your fields. Well, what number should it have? 10 miles per hour for your sprayer? Well, there are several issues that excess speed with the sprayer can lead to in your fields. First is poor coverage. When you're running too fast with a ground rig, coverage suffers. If you don't get good spray coverage, you'll eventually have to respray, which takes much more time than just slowing down to begin with. Second is boom height. If you're running fast, there's no way that you'll feel safe having the boom low enough to the ground, and the higher the boom is above the crop, the drift is bound to increase. Third is droplet size. The faster the sprayer goes, the more turbulence in the air it creates, which can lead to shearing at the nozzle and finer droplets being produced. Finer droplets are more prone to drift and can even evaporate, which is a waste of product. I'm not suggesting that you run 2 miles per hour in the field, but there is a common sense limit that you probably already have. If your ground is flat and your fields are long and square, sure, you can run a little bit faster. When there are lots of twists and turns around terraces or you have rough terrain, your speed is bound to be slower. Follow label requirements this season for speed of sprayer operation and do your best to keep your speed down to avoid poor performance and/or spray drift this year. That's all for today's Iron Talk, and now back to the show.
That's all the time we have for today's show, but before we go, we'd encourage you to check out the Ag PhD radio show. You'll find us on Sirius XM channel 147 at 2 p.m. Central each weekday.
And don't miss the next Ag PhD TV show. We'll have another Weed of the Week, Farm Basics, Iron Talk, and a whole lot more. I'm Darren Hefty.
And I'm Brian Hefty. Thanks for watching Ag PhD.